Welcome to this podcast on innovation, presented to you by ING. Recorded in the ING Cafe during the FinTech Conference Money 2020 in Amsterdam.
Welcome to the ING Cafe at the Rij in Amsterdam, where we have Europe's biggest FinTech event, Money 20, taking place. Please pull up a seat now and join us at our table here at this very Amsterdam-style cafe, where we're going to have a talk with some of the biggest names walking these halls. Together with ING, we're making sure that you do not miss a thing here at Money 2020. I'm Daniel Frankel. I'm a lecturer in consultancy and change at the Rotterdam Business School, and I'm a curious FinTech Luddite, and I'm also going to be your host. And we're very lucky to have joining us here at the ING Cafe, Conny Dorrestijn, the founding partner of BankiFi and an advisory board member of Holland FinTech. Welcome.
Thank you.
Conny, you're one of the most visible names and faces in FinTech, I think we can safely say. And I was curious, you're here at Money 2020. Is this like walking around in a candy store? What's catching your eye?
It is a little bit. And I have to say, you and I have one thing in common. You said you're curious. I'm insatiably curious. And that's why I ended up in FinTech and not just in regular tech. For me, this is like almost a family reunion. And it is also a candy store. And what I like most about it is that you see the two worlds colliding. The three worlds, actually. It used to be two worlds. And the good news this year is that we see three worlds colliding. So we see the regular financial services industry who are, in all fairness, you only see the ones who get it here, which is great. So we don't have to waste our time on people who think that, banks can remain bastions and you just have to trust them. And you see the technology partners, the large players and the small players who each other think. But what I like most about this year is that you see that the whole societal impact thing is coming to the fore as well, because we're not doing this for ourselves. This is not you might think it's a self-congratulatory show if you look around you, but we're doing this for the regular people, the man and the woman in the street, people who have to pay their kids through college. We're doing this for entrepreneurs, and I think that you're seeing that third element coming up, so I'm very excited about that.
Are you seeing somewhat of a split between the young financial FinTech innovators and the financial veterans?
Well, of course, there is a huge difference. And I think the two need each other. And I think for too long, which is a change I'm looking forward to, they've both tried to be each other's persona. So banks have desperately been trying to be hip and modern and agile and innovative. And a lot of the young startups try to be taken very seriously, whereas really there are a bunch of people with some idea that's not yet been tested in many stages. And I think it's very important to some degree that we much more accept who we really authentically are and take the strengths of those two elements and sort of build that into a much more synergetic forum. So to give you one example, I always find it a real shame if in a bank you see a divide between the IT department who runs the operational side in the infrastructure and then the people who do the hip modern stuff with the apps. And I think it's time that we make the people in the IT department who make sure that the bank is run securely, safely, at low operational cost. They should be the new banking heroes, because they actually deliver, at the end of the day, the people what they really want, which is a trusted environment. And I think that banks should be very open to working with fintech companies, because there's no way as a guy who's worked in a bank for 30 years that you have the same mindset as a 21-year-old who's been programming since he was building Lego blocks. That agility and that curiosity and the hugely open mindset. It's not something you can learn, and I think if those two leave each other in their own respective fields but meet, you can get great things happening.
Conny Dorrestijn, with all of your experience in previous undertakings, BankiFi is the result.
Yeah.
Now, is that the result of success or failure or both?
It's the result of insatiable curiosity. I think that with the previous venture I was engaged with, which became a beautiful company, it was founded by 2 people, Clear to Pay, and I was sort of employee number 4, so I wrote the whole ride out till the very end. We transformed the way banks were looking at payments, and so we didn't just optimize it, we really said you're getting this process around payments wrong. You're doing this from various pipes for different products. It's stupid. Put it in a hub. That was a successful venture. But what we learned throughout that, and what I saw particularly, because I always have one eye on society and what's happening there. You saw that whereas people like to talk about, the next assets for banks are data and identity, and I truly believe in that, you also see that people were becoming annoyed with being the play ball of something. So I have a little laugh when people now say, oh, we're all going to go WeChat, because you basically replace one institute of power with another one, but that's another discussion. But we saw that and we said, so as we were going through the whole Clear to Pay thing, it was successfully acquired by FIS. It's found a good home for 1,200 staff, great stuff. We were ready for a new adventure. And I really said we should start at the other angle. And our premise is very much that we're bank friendly. I believe, for one, that banks are here to stay. Banks have a lot to offer. They have a license. Whether we like them or not, we trust them, and they have customers. And all of these 3 elements fintechs don't have. And we said, let's start the other way around and say, so if banks believe that data and identity are key assets to sort of do something with, and of course not just for the benefit of the customer, it's also for the benefit of the bank, and that's fair enough. How do you get that? And you can only get that if you've got the consent of the business or the consumer. And so we said, let's start the other way out. So we now build BankiFi, and it's a consent-driven multi-bank platform. So what we do is we make sure that banks have customers that are willing to give them their data. We organize the consent in a very fine-grained manner. So if a bank, for instance, like Nordea is a launching customer of ours, and they line up hundreds of fintechs, everybody has their own consenting, and it doesn't work. And we aggregate that in one sort of level. But most importantly, I think, by doing that, we give the bank the power to really build what Ralph Hamers was alluding to, a really relevant financial ecosystem in which you allow competition. Because you say to your customers, I've got your data, I have access to your financial accounting package, I can see what happens on your current account, because you've given me access on the PSD2 or open banking, whatever law, I can see whatever you have with other banks. And you know what? You're coming into a state where you need some extra money. And in the old days, you would go and talk to a bank and get a credit line for a year, which is very expensive. You tap into it twice. I think it's very unfair and not transparent. And now banks can say, you know what? Maybe going overdraft is the cheapest option for you. Maybe you should go into my ecosystem and go to Lending Circle and get your money there. And I think that sort of relevance, that's what we're after. But we believe that banks can have that crucial role of being the provider of that. And I think it's like in a normal relationship, it's very strong. If you say, you know what, this is not something I can offer you myself, but somebody else can, and we can do that in our trusted relationship.
Okay, but to a financial fintech Luddite like myself, in the old days, as you say, we used to look our banker in the eye, and we used to reach across and shake their hand. And that was an element of trust.
Yeah.
This is a different kind of relationship now.
It is a different kind of relationship. And I will try to explain it to you with taking the relationship analogy. But first and foremost as well, don't let anybody believe you that the internet is an infrastructure. The internet is a different domain in which we live. So it's got to be as close to real life as possible, because we're not data assets, we're humans. Let me get to the relationship angle. Banks for years have been saying, we want to have a relationship with you. And it basically meant, I want to be able to see you so I can sell you something. That's about as bad as a guy who says, I want to marry you. And then you figure out that he only wants you to cook for him and clean his laundry. And then you say, after a few years, what's in it for me? Well, I'm still here. Okay, yes, great. So let's take this seriously. If you look at a relationship, there's 3 key elements in any relationship that matter. In a good relationship, you feel secure. And it might sound old-fashioned, but everybody looks for that. And whether it's a friendship or a marriage, you want to feel secure. You don't want to be here, it to be here today, gone tomorrow. The second element you're looking for in a good relationship is that there should be space for other people. Nobody can give you everything, not a friend, not a husband, not a wife. And there's got to be space for other people who bring things into the relationship that enrich the entire relationship and that make you happier. And there are things you simply cannot produce yourself. I mean, I would be a very bad partner if somebody wants me to go to the soccer match because it doesn't interest me. So take somebody else. And then thirdly, the third dimension of all of this is there's got to be a sort of a contract. And again, it sounds terribly old-fashioned, but people want to feel secure. And they need to understand what are the boundaries. Even in friendship, you want to know this is done, this is not done. And if you have those three elements, you have a very meaningful relationship that creates a level of peace and a level of excitement, security and the other people. And I think let's take this to the bank, as we say. And so a bank can offer you security because whether we like it or not, they're regulated. We might say, oh, it's not exciting enough. Well, wait for another crisis and we'll see how much we'll love that. So they have that. Then if you look at letting other people into the relationship, they now have the opportunity to do that. I think that the bank can survive if it's a very self-assured partner and says, you know what, I cannot offer you everything. I open up an ecosystem to you of things that can offer you services that I simply cannot offer you. But I offer them through me. You're in this relationship with me. So even if we let outsiders in, you can still feel secure. And the third element is this element of a contract. And I think one thing we forget is that consumers and businesses should also be aware of what you have to give back. And I think we've been giving a lot of data to people who only do one thing, they narrowcast us and sell us more. But you should be aware of the idea that if you give something, you get something back. If people complain about Facebook, I also say to them, listen, you don't like Facebook, but you're on it 24 hours a day, and it's a free platform, and you use it to tell your family what you're doing. There's got to be something, so it's fair they want something back. And I think banks should also create a contract feeling with you that you say, this is what you can expect from us, and it's only fair that I ask something back from you to make this meaningful for both parties. And so if you have those elements of a relationship, coming back to your word of trust, the same as in a relationship, you've got to make trust actionable by, in your behavior, showing that the relationship is worthy to you. So if you say to your partner, I really love you, but you leave somebody else to look after the kids all the time and clean up the mess, that's not good behavior. And banks now, with the whole consent thing and the GDPR and open banking, for me, they really have an action button for trust. If they push that button in my life, they get my trust.
And how does that trust button exist in the realm of big tech nowadays? And what is big tech's realm in establishing trust alongside
banking? Big tech, you mean the platforms like the huge platforms
exactly.
Like the Googles and the Amazons?
Exactly, where we're seeing on a daily basis articles which are making us question the trust.
Absolutely, and you know, Gary Shapiro was recently in Amsterdam and he was balking at the EU and berating us for having the GDPR as a stupid thing, went way too far. And, you know, we shouldn't, it would hinder innovation and you wouldn't get the billion-dollar platforms. You know, I think it's total nonsense. I think that, you know, those real big platforms are not to be trusted as much as little as banks. And, you know, all this regulation is about good behavior, and I think all the regulation is being heaped on financial services. You know, we should really take a look at those big tech firms as well. Because, swap your bank for Amazon or swap your bank for Ant Financial or swap your bank for Google. Do not think for a minute that they're going to be any better. They're all big dominant players and they want one thing, and that's world domination.
And how does the end customer navigate that trust issue? How do they know?
Well, I think one of the things, again, a lot of people don't know, and so they will be disappointed. I think one of the serious challenges we have with the next generation is that they are too trusting. They've never been through a real crisis. They've never been through real mishaps in life, and so anything they get under their finger, they press the button. So how can they navigate trust? I think that really, you know, we should look probably at a little bit more regulation because we simply do not behave well on our own account. The Americans have the CTA code of conduct around data privacy. Well, it obviously hasn't worked.
And how do you see a near-term future in regulation with regards to this?
I just interviewed a lady representing the Dutch Central Bank, and regulators get a lot of criticism because they're always walking behind technology. Well, guess what? Of course they do. They have to look at real life and what's happening and what's being implemented to regulate it. Near term, I'm very optimistic because I see a move in the regulators that they are very much reaching out. They're building sandboxes, they're building innovation hubs, they're working with fintechs, with big techs, with banks to create a fairer playing field. And again, I'm a fintech woman. I was a fintech woman because the word was invented. So I'm an enthusiast. But I also always think we're doing this for people who trust us with their money and their assets. And for instance, if you take this into the crypto world, I think crypto is a great invention. I think we're at the beginning. I think if you look at blockchain, we're probably where we were with the internet before we had a browser. So, sit back and watch it unless you really want to become involved. But it's totally silly to expect regulators to allow people to invest their hard-earned money that they can't lose into currencies that are totally not regulated because people will be taken, benefits from. It's just not the right thing. We have to be careful there. At the same time, they may not hinder it. They've got to follow it, and they've got to take the signal very seriously that people say, you know what, as a society, we're not happy with the fact that politicians who have huge amounts of vested interests just keep printing money and loading debt on debt on debt on the next generation. It's not just America, the same happens in Frankfurt. So you cannot ignore the societal signal like, hey guys, we want to have an alternative means of exchanging value with each other because we're not trusting you as politicians as much as we used to do.
And back to relationships, you think that we'll soon be able to have a committed relationship with our finances and with our bank?
I think so, yeah. I think if bankers are open to that and they're going to be, nice grown-up partners that accept, the life of others that enrich us and that make the relationship better, and they still give us security and an environment in which we feel safe, yes, they can.
Conny Dorrestijn, I wanted to ask you that Steve Wozniak was roaming these halls as well, and what stayed with you when you saw his address, which was entitled "The Future of Everything"?
Yeah, a few things. I really, this is where I'm so glad that we all suffer from unconscious bias, and I thought he's going to be a grumpy old man who's going to complain about, and he wasn't at all. So I was totally surprised. And he had a few things to say that we should really take to heart. And there were two things that I really enjoyed about what he said. First of all, of course, he kicked Gary Shapiro on his ass by saying, this is all nonsense. Regulators are doing a good thing. They can never hamper technology innovation. Technology innovation, like climate change, like whatever, it happens. It happens. You cannot stop it. It runs on its own. And replace the word of regulation with good behavior. And we need, a child that's not being raised properly is an unruly, terrible element. And so we all need a level of education and nurturing and teaching manners. And we have regulators that help in that respect a lot. Not doing it alone, there's also self-regulation, but they help us a lot. So I really like that. And I like the other thing that he said about AI. And he said, let's not get carried away here. It's very important that we learn more, that we do more with data, but people are not data assets, they're humans. And no matter what you do with technology, people want to be treated as a human, and they want to be valued as a human. And the power of recognizing humanity in the whole AI debate is not there yet. And I thought that was very worthwhile.
In terms of things that may not be there yet, I wanted to ask you, you are listed, I know, as one of the global 50 most influential women in fintech.
Yeah.
And as the Luddite, when I take a look at the show, as I walk around the show, I see a lot more men than women in this show.
Of course, yes.
What is the status of women in the industry?
Well, the status of the women in the industry, I've been around for more than 25 years, so I would say it's massively better than it used to be. Just an anecdote, I used to be the content director of a show. It was as big as Money 2020 in the days. It was like 5,000 bankers on a massive cruise ship. And that was a captive audience. There was no internet. They were on the bloody boat and they had to deal with us for 3 days. And it was literally 27 women and 5,000 bankers. They were all men. So we're doing better. We're not there yet. I personally take it upon myself. Always to look out for other sharp and promising women around me. And I take them with me in my curtails and I push them forward and I push them onto platforms where people want me to be. And I encourage them. At the same time, I'm not an advocate of positive discrimination. I think that we're living in a time now where women they don't have equal pay yet, not even in the Netherlands, which is so embarrassing, it's unreal. But at the same time, there's never been a time that it was a better place for women to be in this industry than you are. And so I think before women complain about not being heard or not being seen, I always say start with yourself. Do you make yourself seen? Do you make yourself relevant? And yes, we should help women who do not have that attitude naturally. Women should be loyal. But really, come up for yourself. And I think one of the other women said something very useful yesterday. She said, if you're a woman and you know AI, you know data, you're a queen. And I think that's what I would say to all the young women here.
Conny Dorrestijn, can we say that this discussion was the good start of a relationship in the realm of relationships?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Conny Dorrestijn, the founding partner of BankiFi and an advisory board member of Holland FinTech. Thank you again.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Interested in who else joined us in the ING Cafe during Money 2020? You can find all the podcasts on ing.com or at bnr.nl/money2020.